One. Here we go. All right. Welcome, Charles Castronovo. So do you go by Charles, Charlie? I've heard both.
Yeah, usually, I let people call me whatever form of Charles they like, but most people call me Charlie. My father called
Okay.
me Chachi from, from Happy Days. So,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, so yeah, it doesn't matter what form, it's fine, anything. I don't hear Chuck very much, but I don't think I look like a Chuck, but anyway.
Okay, I won't call you Chuck. But I've heard we have some mutual friends. So you worked with Tasso and Tyler Kimmel are good friends of mine back in the day when you were doing your Neapolitan CD. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we met through Henry Price, and who I worked with a long time ago, meeting him through some mutual friends. And I actually sang a role in an opera at Pepperdine when I was kind of just starting my, just the beginning of my career. So then we stayed in touch, and I had asked around looking for some musicians because I was doing I wanted to do a concert full of Neapolitan songs. So. And then he's the one who suggested Tasso and Austin, and then from there they found Tyler, and so it kind of grew from there. But it was great. And then we ended up doing a show at Pepperdine, since they were all from there. So that was really super fun. And eventually we made a recording. It was really, really good project. Yeah.
That was actually the first time I heard you. I was a student with them at Pepperdine, and when you did that show at Pepperdine, what was that, 7 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just left me with a lasting impression because clearly it was such a level of singing above what we were used to at the time. And this shouldn't be surprising for you. I mean, you're an internationally acclaimed tenor, and so
No matter what, yeah, it's good.
yeah, but it's great. And so I really want to tackle sort of two things with you today. One of which is your career story of your career, because I've heard things. I don't know if they're rumor, or I don't want to call them rumors because it makes it sound bad, but like, I have a rumored idea of the path of your career. But then I also really want to talk to you about how you think about your voice and past inspirations for you. I know Domingo played a big role in your career as well, and I've heard you speak about him before. Of course, with your postino at LA Opera and things like that. We'll get into it.
Okay,
So,
cool.
all right. So let's start with your career.
The headphones, or am I good?
If you Oh, I didn't even notice you don't have them in.
I
Yeah.
just
So,
remembered that I don't have them on, so I can grab them if you need. It's better.
it's a safe idea to use headphones just
Okay.
because an echo can start
Okay.
looping.
So the
Which,
audience, it's right there. I'm gonna grab it. Okay.
yeah, go for it. No
Sorry.
problem. I'm not going anywhere.
I just remembered now. So, all right. Mine are a little bit more. I look like a hipster in the airport now, but
Oh, that's fine. I've got mine too. But for the sake of just, can you hear me?
okay.
Are you all good?
I'm good. And you?
Great. Yeah. I don't know what that did to the sound, but it sounds a lot better. Is there a
Oh,
mic on those?
I don't know. They're just Bose.
Okay, great. I don't know. You sound a lot cleaner.
Okay,
Nice.
perfect.
Good. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. So you were a student at Cal State Fullerton, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. To be honest, I wasn't really so much into the idea of going into school because I just wanted to get on stage. But I guess I was clever enough to realize, I really need to start training normally. And I did a few auditions, Northridge and a few different Cal States. And when I went to Fullerton, I had a nice audition, and the teacher that I would be studying with there was a tenor also, Dr. Mark Goodrich. And so that was what led me to go there. I didn't have the greatest grades, but they did offer me some money just based on the audition, so I had some help for school. But to make a long story short, I loved studying with my teacher there, Mark, and we are still in touch. But after about a year and a half, I knew that I didn't want to stay in school. It just was somehow too slow for me. There were some good students there. I met a couple friends who were really crazy into opera, but by the end of the first year, most of those people left, and I was left with, of course, nice people, also people with some talent, but it seemed like I was the only one walking around with, I guess, my headphones in with the score, listening to opera, just trying to learn and absorb as much as possible. And I felt somehow I wasn't in the right place. So I auditioned at the time there was Opera Pacific in Orange County. It was still
Sure.
around. And I auditioned for the chorus, and I got into one season of the chorus. So at least I was on stage. And then by the end of that year, that was my first year of college. And then by the end of that year, I auditioned for LA Opera. And they started to give me small roles almost immediately. It was just a little bit time after. And then once I was on the stage, for me, just didn't seem useful that I go to a music theory class. You know what I mean? So my voice teacher said, okay, school's not for everyone. I still studied with him privately, of course. But he said, so you're going to have to get your knowledge of the history of the composers of styles all yourself. So I did all that studying just on my own. So I read, I talked to people, and I listened like a maniac. I was like a listening maniac, just constantly listening with a score in my face. So I remember, within 2 years of when I started school, I knew so many operas already, even ones that I still to this day haven't sung yet, or maybe never will sing that role, but I almost had them memorized because I just listened so much. So I learned a lot about, the repertoire. I learned a lot about singers. I also, like everyone, is a little bit part of that Dead Singers Club. Love all the dead singers, not all of them, but So anyway, so I was doing that, and I start to understand. Okay, Gedda is incredible at, let's say, French and Russian, and if you want to hear an amazing Don Carlo, maybe listen to Bergonzi. And so I start to realize what were the height of each kind of genre or even specific roles. And and if I was wanting to, let's say, understand something about Faust, the role of Faust from Gounod, I listened to 20 tenors doing it. And so at the beginning I thought, okay, Domingo was one of my favorites. Let's say if you listen to only him, you pick up mannerisms from that specific singer. But if you listen to 20 singers sing a certain role, you just try to take all the good things that you want. So it's that was my method, and I learned a lot that way. I kind of absorbed all of that. I still do it now, but obviously I listen less than I used to. But before, it was just crazy.
Sure, it's difficult to find the time when you're so immersed in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
deep career with a full schedule, of course.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You need a bit of separation, right? Sometimes
Yeah,
you need
now
to.
it's like back to Led Zeppelin, which was from high school, playing guitar. That makes me feel more, oh, that's better.
That's great.
Right.
That's great. So you mentioned you by the time you were in college, you just wanted to be on the stage. So did you think you were going to be an singer before going to college?
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, I didn't tell you just about the part right before. Well, basically, what happened was, since I was a kid, my father and mother said I was always, dancing or doing some acting in school or in the plays, but when I was about 14 or so, I discovered Led Zeppelin, which is my all-time, this like, bow to my heroes. So then I bought a very cheap guitar, acoustic guitar, and kind of taught myself how to play, learned from other guys who were a little bit better than me, and started playing. So from there, it seemed natural for me to, and I love, besides Zeppelin, the Beatles and most classic rock I was into. So I just started, singing along, learning the songs, and I found that, I could sing pretty well. So I think I was 16 years old, and I was playing guitar during lunch because I would bring my guitar to school. With a friend of mine, we were playing during lunch, some Beatles songs or something, and the choir teacher walked by, and she said, "Well, you have such a nice voice, why don't you join choir?" And I was like, no, I'm going to be a rock star, so no, choir, not so much. But she was an extremely clever woman, a very nice person. But she was, she knows, I guess I was 16-year-old things. She said to me, well, you should really consider it because in choir, there's like 60, 70 girls and like only like 6 boys. And I was like, doo, 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 doo. I did the math in my brain. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll try it.
That's how they get us all. That's how
Yeah,
they get us all.
exactly, right. So, but then once I joined, I loved it because, I'm singing the harmony. I was already used to singing harmony, doing all the Beatles songs. And so when I heard the classical music, it was like, wow, this is actually really cool. And then not too long after, she started giving me solos, And my voice, I love rock and roll, but my voice was always a bit too clean for it. I could sing the notes, I could sing well, but it didn't have that, you know.
Hmm.
So in classical music, it just kind of fit. So, and then of course, when you get a solo, or and I did the lead in the musical and stuff like that. When I got the reaction from people saying, "Oh wow, it's so great," of course, then you feel better and you feel like, okay, I can maybe do this. And then I think by one of my best friends, who's actually visiting me in Berlin now, his father's from Italy, it's the same as my father. But in my family, there are no musicians, but his father loves opera. So I borrowed a CD, a tenor CD, and one of the first things I heard was the entrance of Otello with Domingo. And if you hear
Amazing.
that, you're like, wow, it just explodes your brain. So once I heard that, I was just totally in love with opera. I said, oh, I'm going to be an opera singer. It was that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Wonderful.
So,
So it's Domingo that did it. Domingo's Otello.
well, yeah, that first entrance, esultate. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay, maybe I
Yeah,
don't
that
sing
is
that role, but that idea.
as far as 1 minute arias go, that is probably the best one out there for
Exactly,
sure.
for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and
Amazing.
then from then, I just literally took that CD home and tried to mimic all the tenors on it, just sing along with it. And apparently I was, decent at mimicking them. And then, yeah, and that's how it went from there, just trying to learn. And then I didn't really start having a real voice lesson until I got to university. Cal State Fullerton, it was in 93, September of 93. So, and
How
yeah,
would you do you sorry to interject really quick, but
yeah, no,
I know a lot of my listeners are
yeah,
interested in like developing the voice as a young singer. And
yeah.
so do you remember the qualities of your voice at that time? Did you have issues you were working out, or were you just kind of like,
Oh no, absolutely. I was never okay. Let me be brutally honest with myself also. I think without you maybe know me just a little bit, but I don't have an ego problem. That's not my issue in this world. But so I can be honest with myself about certain things. I know that naturally I always had let's say a beautiful voice. It was a nice voice. The quality was good, but technique was a different story. I wasn't a natural technical singer. Some singers can wake up in the morning or they just start and they sing just really great, even from a young age. They had no problem with the high notes. They blah blah blah. I didn't have that. I think I had a nice quality voice, but I really had to work out each section of my voice. I worked hard on that. So at the beginning, I would say, there was, let's say, natural beauty to it. But for the longest time, even into my career, I never felt perfectly at ease with high notes. I really had to work on them. As I was getting a little bit older, I always had a good middle and bottom, which now looking back probably foreshadowed a little bit of where my career, the direction it would go. But at the time, I was young, so my teacher immediately said, okay, we're going to sing some Mozart, we're going to sing some light bel canto stuff, and which was all fine. But I'm going in three places at the same time with this answer. Sorry, but basically, what I found, it's a mix between, for me, in my opinion, the development is a mix between what you have naturally, what you need to work on, even when you don't want to, and then the third thing is what you're actually working on and practicing, meaning the repertoire. My example of that is that I did a lot of Mozart at the beginning, which is, for example, it's incredible for the passaggio. If you work on your Mozart well and you get it down, especially as a tenor, you get your passaggio worked out really well. Positive. But on the negative side is you almost never use any high notes. I mean,
mhm.
above an A natural. So if you're only doing that, then all of a sudden you sing a role that needs a B flat or a B natural, and you're like, wow, this feels too high. Where on the other hand, if you're singing high Rossini stuff, you work on that stuff all the time, but you might not have to stick around in the passaggio constantly like in Mozart. So I would suggest for any young singers, like if you're working a lot of Mozart, then you go in the practice room by yourself and you practice really high stuff, just so you don't put yourself in one spot. You have to keep stretching it no matter what. Or if you're doing only high stuff, then you need to sing Mozart with long phrases, you know, and all that kind of thing. So I found that, because then it took me a while to use that high note muscle enough where I start to get over fear, then figure out the problems, and then try to improve, you know. And then as the voice changes with age, then you have to readjust again. It's like a never-ending story. So
Of course, of
yeah.
course. Okay, so let's continue carrying on with your career. So you were at LA Opera getting small roles, and
Right, yeah.
then what happened?
So, well, the first role I sang was maybe 6 or 7 lines in a Giordano opera called Fedora, which was great because it was Placido singing the lead. So for me, it was
Amazing.
like, wow, this is so cool. I mean, we barely interacted. You know, there was one scene where we had a little moment, but anyway, I was there, so that was really great. And then I spent 2 years at LA Opera. Back then, there wasn't a young artist program. It was called a resident artist. So basically, you were a resident artist, and we were mostly all quite young, and we sang all the small roles. So we had a monthly pay, salary, and we sang all the small roles, which was really great because it's what I wanted to be on stage. You know, I was surrounded by people, obviously super professional singers. I mean, even a legend like Placido, other great singers, and I just learned so much because, you know, when you sing a small role, of course, it's important. Sometimes it's short enough that, you know, if you blink, you might, you know, miss your entrance. But the freedom of not being in the spotlight, seriously, you could experiment. So when there was a big chorus, you know, and everyone was singing, no one could hear me, but I could really try to belt it out on stage. You know, and if something didn't go right or whatever, it didn't matter because, you know, no one could tell. The whole chorus was singing the leads, and here I was in the small role. So I used that as just to experiment, to see what I was able to do, what I couldn't do. And then the stagecraft, I really worked hard on it there. Because at the end of my 2 years or so, just over 2 years in LA, I think I was on stage singing roles like just about 100 times.
Wow.
So yeah, because I did almost every opera, some kind of small role. Some were a bit bigger, some were less, but I was on stage like literally all the time. So that was a huge experience, you know, and I just totally went for it. Even if I sang these crazy small roles, I just totally went for it. And it was really super positive. And by the time I was done with that, I already thought, I don't think I want to do any young artist program anywhere because I just sang a bunch of small roles. I think I need to start singing bigger roles, even in very small places, just to start getting the experience for that. But what happened was, towards the end of my second year in LA, I had an audition for Jonathan Friend from the Met. And they were looking for a Beppe in Pagliacci. And I auditioned for him, and he offered me the role, actually. And everyone who knows Pagliacci, Beppe is actually, it's a small role, but it's not that small. He has a huge aria, in the second half that's really beautiful and fun and famous, and you have a lot to do. So, and it's very exposed and everything. So I was really excited. It was like a really good step. So, and it was my Met debut, and it was the opening night of the season,
Wow.
1999. And then to add on top of that, it was Placido singing Pagliacci, and it was his, I don't remember what the number was, but it was the opening night where he was passing Caruso in number of opening nights at the Met. So it was like a huge thing. So I was really happy about that.
The
So
house was packed,
yeah,
is what you're
it
trying to
was
say.
like, it was totally crazy. Yeah. And there was a huge ceremony after because they made like it Placido Domingo Day in New York or something. Yeah, the key to the
Yeah.
city. It was like a big thing. It was really cool. Anyway, but so what happened was, when I accepted the offer, so that was great. But then they asked me, they said, you know, Charlie, would you come to New York, and we would like the other people besides Jonathan Friend to hear you. So I went and did an audition there. And then they offered me the Young Artist program. And I really thought about it for about a month, actually, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, and, you know, get stuck in a program and sing, again, small roles. But in the end, I decided I still needed a little time to stew because I was really young. When I started the program it would have been September 99. So I was like 24 years old. So I was really young. you know? So I thought, okay, fine, I can spend, it's a 3-year program. I already said in my mind, I said, I'll probably stay only 2. But I thought a couple more years to stew, it's fine. In the end, it wasn't so bad because they released me 2 times each year I was there to do professional jobs. My first lead role was singing Don Ottavio at Boston Lyric Opera. So they released me from the program. I went there for a month, did my first professional role, leading role, and then came back and continued the program. I did that twice, both years. So I have to give them credit. They were good about that. They released me for those. And I did, some small roles at the Met. There was good and bad. When people ask me, I'm always honest about it. The Met program is a tough place to be because there are, let's say, 5, 6, 7 people who are very important there, and they all tell you something different.
Mm-hmm.
So as a young singer, you want to impress everyone, but you have to. I mean, I was pretty confident for my age at that time because they wanted me to study with a teacher there, but I said, no, I have to study with my teacher in LA, with Mark Goodrich, because everything's going fine. I don't want to mess with it. So I actually convinced them to fly him out once a month to New York. He didn't charge me for flights. He didn't charge me for lessons, excuse me. They just paid, and he stayed with me. But I think for them, they probably saved money because, in New York, the teachers are very expensive. So they're like, one easy flight from LA to New York a month, no problem. He stayed with me anyway. So I continued working with my teacher. And and by the end of the second year, though, for me, it was enough. I needed to really get out there and start learning my craft. So they weren't too happy. They wanted me to stay the third year, and I think I paid for it in some way after, because I didn't return to the Met for 10 years until I sang at the Met, a lead role, and I sang almost all over the world. But they didn't care. It took them 10 years to ask me back. But
I'm so happy you offered that tidbit, because that was what I was hinting at before, what I had heard through the grapevine,
Yeah, no,
so.
Absolutely true. They were, who knows who will say what, but definitely they were not so pleased, I think. Thank you, Milo.
Yeah, because you were singing at La Scala, Royal Opera House. You were making big debuts everywhere, right?
Yeah,
and
basically everywhere. And, my manager, I've had the same manager for a long time. He was always like, oh, by the way, Charlie is singing blah, blah, a new Traviata at the, here in Covent Garden. And, blah. And they weren't biting her at all. So, which was funny because it was strange, because since I kind of started there, first LA and then New York, it would have been great to go back. Of course I want to go back. But then it became like a thing. I thought, when I finally did go back, I was singing Don Ottavio, and my wife was singing Zerlina. So it was great. It was like I had this extra support going back. But it was so funny because on the premiere, on the opening night, I went out for my aria for Dalla Sua Pace. And, I was nervous just because it was already like a thing, that I hadn't been there and how they're going to feel or whatever. And I start singing the aria, and it's going really, really well, And by the end of the aria, basically I know now that I completely nailed it. I just nailed it to the wall. And the way it was staged was, as I finished the aria, I'm right downstage at the end, and I'm like, Morte mida. And I turn around, and, it's like you walk off into the sunset, and it's like, looks like there's, the sunset there, and then the curtains kind of close behind me like this, right? And sometimes you have those experiences. Okay, sometimes you think, oh, that was good, I did well, and you walk off stage. But this time, I knew that I had that audience, like, right in my hand. So I'm walking off, and it was like all I could do to just restrain myself from just, as I'm walking backwards, just going, yes, like this, Yeah, obviously that would have been out of character, but I didn't do that. But then when it closed, I was like, yes, and I felt it. And I heard behind the audience, I was like, yes, I was really happy. So that was for me a good, re-entry into New York. So I was happy about that then.
That's wonderful. I unfortunately missed that run of Giovanni. I was a student at Manus at that time.
You were at Manus. Okay, cool.
And of course, like me and my tenor buddies, the tenors who went there was like that Castronovo, man, the way he sung that Dalla Sua Pace. I remember, cool, yeah. I can think specifically of 2 tenors who both were commenting the same thing the day after. So you definitely left an impression. But what I did catch was after one of those shows was your show at 54 Below doing Neapolitan songs, where you had so I think Tasso was in New York and we were hanging out with Tasso and he was like, Charlie's studying, he's taking lessons now with this guy, Arthur Levy. And I was like, well, that's my teacher. I was like, how cool is that? And then I was talking to Arthur about it a little bit. But what Tasso said is like, Charlie is a beast. He goes and has these lessons with Arthur. He comes to rehearsals with us. He goes, performs at the Met, and then he performs another show all in the same day.
It was
at 54 Below. And his voice is like fresh the whole time.
I was pretty tired by the end of that day, but we kind of made a fun thing one day. We had a pickup rehearsal, to be sure, and we booked these shows. Glenn Roven, who was a producer of the CD, he has all the connections, and all the Broadway stuff. That's his real world, where he has been for a long time. So he thought it would be a great idea, and I thought, at first I was like, He said, why don't you sing the performance at the Met, and then run over right after and do a set at 54 Below, because it's like a cabaret place, And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I can think of more difficult roles to sing before singing a whole night of Neapolitan songs. So I thought, okay, let's do it. So we kind of made it a thing, and it was actually really fun, And the band was, the guys were there already set up, and I rushed in, from the taxi after the performance. We did the bows. I got out of makeup and costume and rushed over there, and then we just we started up. It was actually a really cool experience. It was fun, and I was a bit tired at the end, but with Neapolitan songs, it's more about the emotion, and if you have a little bit of in your voice, it kind of works anyway. So it was.
I didn't notice that. I actually think I still have a bootleg recording of you singing "Cor Ingrato" at the very end of that show. And just I remember watching this little video the next day, doing my tenor obsession. It's like, holy crap, how does he sing those B flats like that, or do those diminuendo, that dolce singing or whatever, after having sung for hours that day, full throttle? There
was a lot of adrenaline that night, I guess. That definitely helped for sure. But yeah, so that was a really fun experience, and I wouldn't like to do that very often, but every once in a while, that was cool. It was pretty fun. I actually ended up doing something like that one more time in London. I couldn't get the guys over, but I put a little patch group together in London and did a smaller version of a few of the songs. I made some musicians. They were good. They weren't like my group. Those guys, we worked hard. We worked hard on the nuances, and we worked like crazy on each detail. They did all the arrangements. We kind of did it all together, and this other group was, they just kind of learned the stuff, and it was a quick thing. It was fun, but those times in New York was quite a special thing. So, and I would like to do it again sometime with a different set of songs, or even my idea is that because my father's from Sicily, southern Italy, I wanted to do that, kind of like as a tribute to that part of my heritage. But my mother's from Ecuador, so and I'm kind of piecing it together now, but I'd like to do a whole group of songs all from Latin America, from Ecuador, from Argentina, from wherever, all South
Venezuela or
I thought maybe to make the link from Spain to Latin America, but as the Neapolitan songs are basically popular songs, I thought to do the same thing with Latin music, old boleros and stuff like that. There is so much repertoire out there. I found a lot already doing the research, and I thought to have a small group and do the same kind of idea, but all with the Latin music, and that would be another project like that. So that's an idea. It's not. I haven't completely formed it, but that's kind of the idea. Yeah,
that's a great idea. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
and I
think do both sides.
And I think even eventually a natural progression might be to hear an album of American songs or something like that, which would be also very interesting for listeners to hear you do.
Yeah, I would be into that also. There's so much out there. I'm doing a concert this summer in Lithuania, of all places, in Vilnius. It's a nice city. I had done a couple concerts there before, so they said, we'd like to do an outdoor summer concert with you, which is a big thing and everything. And they said, you can do whatever you want. And I thought, why don't I tap into some of that American stuff that's been in my mind? So we're going to do, and it's summer, it's outdoors and everything. So I thought, why don't I do like a whole kind of Mario Lanza night? You know,
Awesome.
you know what I mean? This old
Yeah.
MGM Mario Lanza movie music. I mean, there are so many, Be My Love, Daddy, all
Hmm.
that stuff. And, for them, it's perhaps not traditional like it is in America, but everyone knows these melodies and it's very nostalgic and beautiful. So that's what we're going to do. So,
Yeah, and the way you would sing it as well wouldn't be like a pop singer trying to sing.
no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it would be with
That's the
your
thing with
voice.
that kind of music. It's like you need a serious singer because that stuff's hard.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
So yeah, so I would like to tap into that kind of stuff too. So this would be my
Amazing.
first try. Yeah, I mean I've done one. I with the BBC Proms, I worked with a great orchestra, John Wilson Orchestra, and they specialize just in that kind of thing. So and that kind of awoke in me and like, yeah, why haven't I done this? Of course I've heard all the tenors and of course Lanza. So I thought, well, why haven't I tapped into this? I mean, I'm a American, Italian, this is like, I could do this stuff. So people love it too. So anyway, so now that's kind of a new idea to explore. So.
Wonderful. So I just want to go back and clarify something. What we didn't get so far with your career is when did you get
Mhm.
your first break overseas?
Oh,
And
yeah.
how did that part of your career progress? How did people first receive you in Europe? And was it a relationship or did someone hear you somewhere and invite you over? How did that work out?
Okay, great. Yeah. Actually, like I said, so I told you how starting in the States, my first things were like in Boston, Pittsburgh, Portland. I sang my first Così and my first Elisir and stuff like that. So, regional opera houses. Then what happened is when I was in the middle of that, I guess basically right at the end or just as I finished the Met program, I was already working with my managers, Zemsky Green in New York. And I was in New York, still living there at the time. And my manager said, hey, I have an audition for you. It's quite an interesting one. Um, but we need to go actually over into New Jersey, which I thought, okay, this is weird. But it was actually Barenboim. So, and they knew him a bit, and they said, listen, you really need to hear this young tenor. And he was looking to find a Don Ottavio. So we went over to New Jersey. My manager came with me, and I auditioned for Barenboim, and it went really well. I sang both of the Ottavio arias. So he actually offered me my first. Just to be a little bit clear, I had done a couple small things in Europe. I did one concert where we did highlights from West Side Story, for example, and that was in Cologne, Germany, and I did one concert also in Cologne and a couple other cities. We did Rossini Stabat Mater, which we actually ended up doing a recording for a smaller label in Germany, and we did a concert. So those were the only things I had done in Europe. So they were just short concerts. Anyway, I got the job with Barenboim, and so I made my debut at the Berlin Staatsoper with Barenboim. It was Cecilia Bartoli and Rene Pape. So it was like, whoa,
Big time.
and Barenboim. And and then so it was a big success. And from there, they offered me quite a lot of things in Berlin at the Staatsoper. And I started coming once or twice a year after that. And I never took a fest contract or anything. I was enjoying to be freelance. But anyway, I was coming pretty often here. And and then from there, that's when other European things started opening. Of course, I was doing some auditions at the beginning, but after a while, I had sung, in a couple good places like, I sang in Paris. I think 2003 was my debut. It's Falstaff, singing Fenton. And then from there, it wasn't too much longer where I had to stop. I didn't have to audition anymore, so which was great. It was already kind of building on itself, which is great because I hated auditioning. I mean, like everyone, I don't think anyone likes auditioning.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
a quick question for you because there can be a disconnect in terms of like how do singers at your level audition? Do you go to someone's apartment and do it that way, or do you go to the opera house and do it that way? What does that sort of look like? If you can just touch on that for a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last time I had an audition was already quite a long time ago, but there are certain, let's say conductors who are much older or, crazy, insane, famous, and no matter who you are, and if you sing all over the world, they still want to hear you, So it happens sometimes. And I never have a, like, oh, I'm not going to audition. It's not me. If it's someone really, really interesting, why not? But now what I did last time anyway, I said, perhaps we won't call an audition. Can we have a little working session? You know what I mean? So, where we sit together and he says, hey, try this, or can you sing a bit of this, instead of me going up there saying, hello, my name is Charles Castronovo, I would like to sing for you, blah, blah, blah. No, I can't do it anymore. So, and it's not about ego. It's just, I paid my dues. Like, how about we just sit at the piano and work on something? And if you like me, fantastic. If not, okay, it's okay, So the last couple ones that I've done have been like that. So anyway, I think it all goes by reputation. So, at the beginning, everyone has to do their auditions. Luckily, I did enough decent ones to get the jobs. And then from there, people said, well, he sang Don Ottavio with Barenboim in Berlin and blah, 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 and then they start to say, okay, it's fine. I'm sure he's fine.
The snowball grows.
Yeah. Of course, you have to back yourself up when you get there. If you go and you sing like crap for all your shows, then that word will also snowball,
Of course. Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a constant upkeep, which it can be tricky. But, this career is, we'll get into that too at some point, but it's a pretty cutthroat career, because that whole old saying is like, you're only as good as your last performance is, it's like 95% true. I mean, maybe there is some part where people who know you, they'll say, okay, that wasn't his best performance, but we know his normal level is quite good. So, they don't take it like, okay, he's done or she's done or whatever. But there are a lot of people who will immediately say, oh, he's not singing well, even though maybe 2 weeks before you had amazing performance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, people really do judge singers that way. I mean, historically, you look back at singers and you say, well, at this point in, let's look at Carrera's career, when he got sick, the voice went and he had to get it back and so forth. And the same thing with Villazón, with his famous departure from his career and then him coming back. And people will always associate, unfortunately, those singers with those issues, even though 2 years before Carreras got sick, he sang better than or at the same level as anyone. He's like, he's a god. So those early recordings of him singing like Nessun Dorma with piano for a private recital are just insane. I don't know if you've heard those before.
Oh, yeah, I basically found everything available on Carreras. He's the one who inspires me the most. Like, Domingo was a very important figure for me. Just his whole career, how he goes into everything, the vast, just knowledge of his.
He's at like 140 roles or something now.
For me, it's like, wow. But Carreras is the one, when I listen to him, especially his earlier recording, he's the one who makes me want to sing. Like, I hear that and say, I must sing, because
I want to try. Yeah, my turn.
I want to do that. He's the one who inspires me that way. But so now I forgot where I was going with this.
Oh, yeah, we were talking. Yeah, sorry, I kept interjecting. And
no,
but
not at all.
We're talking about the 95% of your career, or it's 95% true.
Yeah, that's 95% true. That's very true. So, but anyway, so you were asking me about. I'm sorry, I forgot where we were going.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was hearing about your how you got into Europe and you went to Paris, and then so what about your debut at the Royal Opera? When did that first happen?
Yeah, I think that was also 2004. I had a lot of important debuts right around between 2003 and 2006. A lot of big ones. In 2004 was Covent Garden, and it was in Così, and. Also, it was I was really happy with it, and that started one of my best relationships with the opera house, because from that time I go. Let's see. So that was 2004, and it's already 2017. I think I only missed 2 seasons at Covent Garden since that time, and in other ways, like on another season, I would show up 2 times. So basically, I sang there every year since 2004, and it's probably my favorite opera house to sing in. It's a beautiful house. I mean, it's a great city. The people who work there are amazing. The production value, the quality is really high. The audience is very educated and enthusiastic. It's really a great place to perform. For me, it's one of the best opera houses in the world, if not the best. Yeah.
It's
So yeah,
beautiful inside.
yeah, and also it's beautiful, of course. Yeah.
Mhm.
But so that's been a really important. They've also given me debuts in certain things that like that no one else gave me at first. Like I'd sing my first rondine there, um,
That
Rake
was
of
with
Progress.
Gorgu,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And that's about the whole process too, because like at the beginning I was singing a lot of Mozart and bel canto, and then I started adding in some of the French rep, but not too big yet. I was doing Pearl Fishers and I started doing Faust, which is kind of here or there. It's like some big moments, some lighter moments, but I took it really slowly. When people usually ask me about the trajectory of my career, as far as roles go, especially, I always took my time. Um, I knew almost every word of Otello, in college because I listened to it so much, but I didn't think like I have to sing this role or else I failed. Perhaps I will never ever sing this role, but I'm okay with it. So, and some roles I sang earlier than I imagined. I had a list, believe it or not. This is how crazy it was. I had a list of roles, and when I thought I would sing them, like how old. I say, oh, I'm going to sing this role at age 33. Like I had literally a list,
Wow.
which is like kind of crazy. But
Well, it's
it
just
was
something you
like,
don't hear every day. I wouldn't call it
yeah,
crazy, but
no, but I mean, it was
responsible
a bit obsessive. I mean, actually, most of my
for your
roles,
tenor.
yeah, right, exactly. I think most of them I ended up actually doing a bit later because I was going. Basically, I tried to find every book biography on every tenor that I could find, and at the back they always had all their roles and when they first sang them. What year. So then I would go and check their birth year, and I would try to see. Oh, Pavarotti was 32 when he sang Lucia the first time. Oh, it's interesting because he sang roles who you might consider heavier even before that. It's just interesting to see what people did. So Carreras, I said, wow, he sang much heavier roles much younger than I could do. Okay, so if he did that, okay, but Gedda even waited maybe too long for this. You know what I mean? I would just try to balance it out. Like, where do I fit in this
Mhm.
this map? So I kind of made it an obsession of mine to know about those kind of things.
So, but what first inspired you? Was that a teacher that told you to start thinking about like, you don't want to sing heavy things too early, or was that
Well,
something that you just
yeah,
innately knew?
I think my teacher Mark Goodrich was careful with me when I auditioned for college. I auditioned with the Don Jose's aria from Carmen, because for me it was beautiful and lyric. I didn't know, a 21-year-old tenor shouldn't sing Don Jose. I didn't know. I heard Carrera sing it. It was gorgeous. I could sing it with the CD in my room. It wasn't so heavy. I thought it's fine. So I did the audition, and he said, "That's lovely." He said, "But okay, now we're gonna put that one away till later, and we're gonna, sing, Zauberflöte and stuff like that." It didn't occur to me yet until later. The kind of, thinking about the way the roles go. Like kind of what order you should kind of do them in. So, but the way I did it was all about absorbing as much of the repertoire as possible. I literally walked around with headphones and scores. So if I said, wow, what's this weird Donizetti opera called Lucrezia Borgia? I'm like, okay, let me hear it. I found a recording. It's an old recording with Caballé and Krauss, and it's amazing. I
Hmm.
knew that whole opera like in 1990, I don't know, 8. I
You
didn't sing
performed
it.
that this year. You performed that this season, didn't
Yeah,
you?
well, not this season, last season, but I
Hmm.
ended up singing it in Munich like 3 different times. I sang it in Brussels and stuff like that. Who would have known that I would have used it? But when I was asked to do it, I didn't remember every word, of course. I had to restudy it, but I knew it. I knew how it went. And I knew it was a Krauss role, and certain singers sang, and I thought, okay, that's good. That's good for me. I'm in that part of the world. And so I had a big background on it already, so it wasn't a big shock. I mean, there were some roles that I didn't know as well, but almost all of them I did know. So
Uh-huh.
that was a real positive for me, and I knew about the style. I knew the traditions already, because I would listen to many more than one recording.
Of course, you'd hear
So,
how they were all doing the
yeah,
same thing in certain parts and different things in other parts.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but as I started to add, let's say some of the more lyric French roles, I started to realize. something different too. My body was changing as I started getting a little bit older, and I thought I need to. My voice was telling me I wanted to add more, and I was, somehow, but I didn't really have the means or the kind of reinforcement to go where I felt my instinct was going.
What do you mean by
So,
reinforcement, though?
well, like someone to say, yes, you're right. What you're
Sure.
doing by instinct is correct. We need to keep going this way. I felt I needed to use more of my body, that I needed to use more of my voice because, for example, Mark is an amazing teacher. And for me, as a young singer, he gave me such a great basic knowledge of technique in my voice that I was able, for the whole first half of my career, to stay in good shape, to sing well, and even to improve. But I think the approach, which is, I think happens a lot in America, now that I've been all over the world and seen singers young and older from different parts, let's say the German school and the American school and the Italian school, whatever. I've learned a lot. I'm very much observing what people do, because you can never learn enough, and it always changes. So when I hear someone, I think, how do they do that? I would like to understand how they're doing that. So anyway, I found that the American school, not everyone, of course, but most teachers will teach a very a light technique, or very forward. So no, it should stay forward. Don't way down the note before you're going up. Bright. But that made me sing just from here up. I was basically using voice from here up. I didn't use anything else, and my body was telling me to do that. And sometimes I would find it just by luck. So I felt this feeling to do something different. And so I wasn't seeing Mark very much because I was all the time gone. So we just keep in contact. Sometimes I'd see him for lessons. But then my manager actually suggested to me to see Arthur. And Arthur was great and totally what I was needing, which was allowing myself to do that full, deep, darker sound, free, not manufactured at all, which I didn't quite trust all the way. So one of the first lessons we had, and my manager was there because they are friends also, and we were doing some exercises, and he said, just sing how you would sing when no one's around, basically. And I start to really, let it go, all the color out. And they were both like, yeah, that. And I thought, it's not too heavy. Does it hurt? No, it actually feels really nice. I said, it's not too dark. For us, it sounds perfect. But I had to have this reinforcement say, no, you're okay, because I felt it was right, but I wasn't sure, and plus all the stuff from before, stay kind of, and now it's not about weight. It's just about allowing the full voice from bottom to top, the sound. I don't mean the range, the sound, and once I started doing that, of course, the voice immediately started growing even more just from nature because I was releasing it. And then with that became a bit more confidence in going. And of course, I went a little bit too far at the beginning. The first thing I sang after having lessons with Arthur was a Zauberflute in Chicago. And it was like a Helden. Like I was like, oh, because I was probably going a bit too far,
Yeah, sure.
because I was experimenting. And then I thought,
Yeah.
okay, that's probably a bit too much. And then I kind of brought it back to where it should naturally be. And then from there, it just started growing. And then I started adding, roles that require that more often. But what I have found is that which I always suspected to be true, was that I'm more of a, let's say, a full lyric tenor with a darker sound. And even though I sang some high rolls, I never sang Rossini, but I did sing quite a few rolls that really are really up there. It never was my real calling. So now that I sing rolls that are much more middle based with, your high notes here and there, but not living up there, all of a sudden I thought, oh, now I remember how much I love to sing.
Wonderful.
Because when you sing those roles where, you can do them, but they're all the time like, oh, you know what I mean? It's always on edge. And I thought, wow, I don't really feel like I'm enjoying this too much. And now it's totally a different story. So
Wonderful. I think that's really showed itself with especially the recent acclaim you've received from, let's say, the Lenski in Chicago. People went nuts for that, and I wish that I could have seen that. But I heard reviewed. There's another podcast called Opera Box Score, and they are based in Chicago, and so they all went to see it, and they all came back like, Charles Castronovo. I've never heard of him before, which is
well, I never sing in America though. I never sing in America. That's the thing. Okay.
yeah, but yeah, you left them all.
Oh, that's cool. Well, okay. I mean, maybe that role is even a bit too comfortable because I mean,
it doesn't go very high. Sure.
You know, it only goes to A, and
it's very short. It's a short role as well.
I mean, and it's such a role. I mean, if you just can sing basically beautiful, you basically steal the show because it's such a sympathetic role.
Both of those arias are amazing.
Both of them arias are amazing, and then you have a glorious death. So I mean, it's a pretty good role, you know. But I think maybe, without tooting my own horn, I think maybe the reason why it was a bit more successful than just the role being so lovely was that finally now I just, I'm able to really release, and it becomes a different story. It doesn't become about how loud it is or whatever. It becomes now more about like full-bodied, earthy, bloody singing, like in the best sense, because you start to find your right spot. So that's why I was able, I think, to do that. The World is Gorgeous, of course, that helps a lot. But yeah, so I think that's what it is. That's what I found. And the crazy thing is, what I was going to say was, I mean, that's relatively recent. I would say the last 5 years, I started to find something was going on. I thought, and I was slowly adding roles. We were talking about the way the roles go. I always was cautious about it. I remember it was quite a long time ago. It seems like now my manager said, I want you to sing Lucia. You sing Lucia. Eduardo is a great role for you. And I said no 3 times, over the course of 3-4 years. I said, no, I don't know. I'm just not ready. I'm not ready. Finally, I accepted it. This was quite a long time ago already. And it was in Brussels. I thought, okay, it's smaller opera house, long rehearsal period. Great. So I did it. It was good. It was good. It wasn't great. It wasn't like, oh man, that was amazing. Give me more now. It was good. And I thought, okay, I did it. Obviously, I didn't hurt myself. I sang pretty well. This part was actually really good. This one was really difficult, blah, blah, blah. I put it away. I put it away for like 4 years. And I didn't do it again until much later. I did a Covent Garden new production. And then by that time, I thought, yeah, okay, this is really good. Like now, I feel quite, I mean, it wasn't perfect, by the way. There was still a couple moments I'm like, man, this role's damn hard, But the last scene is a killer. But I was to the point where like, okay, now I'm cool with this, I don't mind to take these now. And I was just clever enough to know, and, I suppressed any ego enough to say, come on, use your brain. You don't need to be doing this 50 times if it's like just fine, So I put those kind of things away. Also, the first time I did Bohème, it was also good. It was in Detroit, quite a long time ago. And then I put it away for a few years. I knew I won't hurt myself, but it just wasn't quite right. Now I love it,
Mm-hmm.
So I was always patient with that. And anytime a younger singer asks me anything, I say, just take it easy. It's no problem. It's no problem. You don't have to do Bohème. And there is some truth, though. I remember my manager saying, because, when you're in your earlier part of career, you think, how can I get to this level and that level? And he said, it is slower. No one, I mean, you can't get as famous, let's say, singing Così as you can, singing a bunch of Bohèmes or Don Carlo. It obviously has more attraction and excitement when you sing those things. But you can sing those things, but if you screw yourself, then it's also gone just as fast as it gets, as you get it. So, I had to suppress all, that youth, like, yeah, I want to do this and this. And so I took kind of the slower route, but in the end, it served me well, because now I feel like I'm just really starting to hit my prime now. So I feel really good. And, when someone says, we never heard of Charles Castronovo, that just makes me laugh, because I rarely sing in America, usually once a year. Since I started in Berlin in, I guess it was 2003, almost all my career, 95% of my career is in Europe. And it's great because you get everywhere really quick. The houses are a bit smaller. I was able to just slowly let myself develop, without freaking out too much. Had a few moments where, okay, I wasn't feeling great, and then you recoup, you go back and you do it and you start again. So yeah, that's been the basic kind of arc of what's been going on until this point. Now singing, I'm doing Damnation of Faust now at Staatsoper Berlin. It's a role, and now I've sung. This is my 7th production, but I've never done it on stage. I've only done it in concert. So, and it's one of those weird French roles, where you need complete lyricism, and then there are some moments where you need to be like, whoa, it's like almost like Wagner. Berlioz, the last aria is like enormous, but I love it now because it's really that central, big singing. So it doesn't. In that aria anyway. And for me now, it's like, that's what I love to do. But I'm able to keep the lyricism, like in the duet where you have a high C sharp. I do voix mix, because if you sing it too, like, it kind of ruins the whole mood. It's very kind of intimate. So I'm still able to mix the both, and I feel good about it. Simon Rattle conducting. So now, so it's really good level and really interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. And it's amazing that as your voice progresses and gains more physical substance to it, that the range is still there, because you said you did early performances in Europe when you first went over of Stabat Mater, which has a high D flat at the end of that aria.
Never
and
liked that too much.
Yeah, it's unaccompanied as well. So it's crazy. But the fact that you're still performing those notes, even if it's voix mix, there's still some reinforcement to the chest register in that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I have to give props to Led Zeppelin and the Beatles for that, because being in those bands, you use that kind of strong falsetto voix mix thing for that kind of music. So I always was able to kind of keep that going. It doesn't get too hooty. When I do it, everyone thinks, how do you sing this voix mix so loud? But I don't know. I guess I figured out how to kind of reinforce it. And I knew I was onto something, because when I was singing Pearl Fishers, I sang it one time in Washington D.C. when Placido was the intendant there, and Placido asked me. He said, "Charlie, come." I said, "Yes." He said, "Charlie, how do you sing this B flat pianissimo, but and it sounds, how do you do this?" He was asking me, how do I do that? And I thought, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to say. I said, it's kind of like it's voix mix, but I really support it. And I was trying to explain something. I wasn't very good at explaining, because I was shocked that he was asking me something.
Amazing.
But it was pretty cool. But that's
what a cool memory to have, though. My goodness.
It was so cool. It was really cool. Yeah. But I have a few really lucky, interesting memories. One time when I was at the Met program, I think it was my 2nd year, and Pavarotti came to sing Tosca at the Met. And sometimes at some of the little functions or little lunches, or something like that, they invite 1 or 2 of the young artists, Anyway, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I was able to meet him. And someone introduced me and said, "Luciano, this is Charlie Castronovo. He's a young tenor in the program." And I was, of course, like, like, wow, it's Pavarotti. And he said, this is no exaggeration. He said, "Great to meet you." He said, the first phrase was, "Great to meet you." Second phrase was, "Do you want to sing for me?" I was like, "Yes, please." Yeah. And I think 3 days later, maybe 4 days later, I was in his apartment on Central Park. I don't remember, Central Park West or something. Yeah, Central Park West, I think. He had an apartment there. And I was there with the pianist, and I sang for him for like 40 minutes. And I walked in the door. It was crazy. I walked in the door. He was on the couch with his feet up on the table, eating a bowl of ice cream.
Oh my God.
And he had his scarf. He had his colorful scarf around it. And he's sitting there again. Bien, Giovinotto, come. And it was crazy. He said, "Okay, so what will you sing?" And I sang like some Traviata and blah blah blah. I sang some stuff. And he said, "Okay, bravo, do this." And he was very knowledgeable. He knew exactly what to ask for. And he said, "Okay, sing for me. I want to hear your high C." I was like, "Okay." He said, "Sing for me just the big phrase of the Bohème aria, La Speranza." I never sang the role yet at that time. And, but of course I know how the phrase goes. So, I didn't have that score, but, he had a score there and the pianist played. And just from pure adrenaline, I just had a great high C. I don't know how I did it, because sometimes it just wouldn't happen at all. It was probably from adrenaline. And he said, okay, bravo, very good. And then the other thing he asked me, which showed how smart he was, he said, one of the most important things for the tenor is around the E and F natural, and right as the passaggio is about to start. He said, it needs to be very open and relaxed, not too open and not too covered. I mean, he was trying to find that balance, which he was able to do. And he said, I want you to sing this phrase from Verdi Requiem, this hostias, which is extremely exposed, right on E natural. So, I mean, I kind of remember how it went. He just said, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I did that a few times, and he said, okay, just stay really like, you know, and so he was like really working with me. It was amazing. And then he said, at the end, he said, okay, bravo. He said, when I was your age, you know, I was still studying and you already started your career. Really great. Stay like this. And he said, if you need my help, just give me a call. And I was like, okay, what do you think? I asked him for his phone number. Can I have your cell number, Luciano? I was like, okay, thank you. And then I left, you know, I mean, what am I supposed to do? I didn't have the balls to say, well, how do I contact you? I just was, you know.
No, you probably could have just died right there.
I was just like, okay. I mean, maybe he was just being kind. Like, if you need my help, let me know. But I didn't know what to say. Like, can I get your phone number? Or like,
oh
so
my God.
That was it. I never spoke with him again, but pretty awesome experience.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was
oh
so
my gosh.
cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, that was super fun.
I want to touch a little bit on some qualities of your voice that I think are unique to you, but follow a bit of a trend that we're seeing with singers today. You hear now, with all due respect, because I regard you as like a very well put together, someone to look up to for a lot of young tenors, especially.
Thank you.
But that said, you hear a lot of coaches, fans of the old world of singing saying, oh, singers aren't like what they used to be. You know, you hear this all the time, right? So yeah. I just wanted to hear what you think of when you hear a comment like that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting now from being in this position, you know, this kind of level where you're around great singers all the time. And, you know, like I said to you earlier too, I'm also kind of from that Dead Singers fan club, you know. I mean, most of the singers I love are gone, you know. And I mean, I'm a huge tenor fan. I love tenors in general. So
I want to hear like if you to name 5 of your favorite tenor voices.
Okay, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I mean, in no particular order, because sometimes it changes, but
they're good for different things. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. I mean, definitely Carreras. I mean, it's really hard. It can rotate all the time. Definitely Carreras, just the natural like excitement and youth and raw energy. Especially you listen to him in the in the 70s. It's just every time, even now, I'm like, you know, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. I love. Oh God, there's so many. There's a tenor that most people don't know that I discovered quite a few years ago now in my research. His name's André Darcourt. He was a Belgian tenor, André Darcourt, D''Arkor. He, for me, is like one of those singers who's absolutely. Oh God, how do you explain such a singer? He's super elegant, beautiful timbre, beautiful production of his voice, singing extremely elegant, but it never feels like he's wearing gloves. Like, I can't touch this music too much. He really sings like a man, but absolutely elegantly. He sounds like a count, you know, like, or a duke or something. Just, it's masculine, but so elegant, you know? So he's a big hero of mine. Most people don't know him, you know, just because it's
never heard of him in
from
my
the
life.
40s, 50s. You got to check it out.
Post-war era. Great.
André Darcourt. Anyway, so I would have to put him in there, even though he's very unknown.
Great.
I mean, of course, Domingo, for what we talked about, not just for beautiful voice, but just the range of what he's able to do. Is this huge hero of mine. Oh, wow, there's so many. Who else am I crazy about right now? I mean, like everyone, I'm also getting crazy about Corelli just for the excitement of the voice. I mean, sometimes I think, oh my God, this is the sloppiest singer I've ever heard in life. But there's something about the animalism of his voice, like animalistic kind of
It's
just
amazing.
beauty. Is just like, wow. Um, of course, I'm fans of Gedda and Kraus and everything. But if I have to put it in those top five, it's really, man, that's really hard. I also love Bierling. It completely opposite of what I would consider how I would try to produce my voice. You know, it's a very squealo kind of centrally, focused voice. Um, but if I have to put one, then I'll say also Di Stefano, because I would never try to sing like him at all. I mean, I can acknowledge even from back then, I could recognize like, wow, I'll never do that. But he makes me want to sing, like he really touches me. So nowadays it's more about who touches me the most,
Hmm.
as opposed to, how great Gedda can sing a high D natural, which I
Sure.
love. It's amazing, of course, and Gedda is amazing, different styles, languages. But nowadays it's usually about who touches me the most. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and out of modern tenors, it's more difficult. I don't have any top people that I really, really love, but I just take from all my colleagues now. I think, wow, how does he do that? I really like how he does that. I would like to understand that or do that. And I take that from a lot of different tenors, just.
So who are some of the tenors singing as colleagues of yours today that you have maybe borrowed things from or have
Yeah,
looked
sure.
at?
Oh, just in that list, I forgot, of course, is Wunderlich in
Yeah,
that top five list. I mean, for me, Wunderlich is a natural
it's assumed.
gift to the world. It's just, yeah,
Yeah,
everyone. It's
there are
impossible to
certain
deny
tenors
it.
that are just assumed, like
Yeah,
Wunderlich, Pavarotti,
yeah,
Caruso, Gili.
exactly.
Like if you don't mention them, they're still there. It's
Yeah, of
just
course. It's impossible to leave them out. Yeah. So yeah, for nowadays, like for example, everyone, like let's say the top tenor in the world right now is Kaufman, and he's a really cool guy. He's a very interesting person. I like him as an artist so much. I like his voice very much. Specific things about his voice, not every single detail. Everyone has their taste, but what I like about him is that he's really brave enough to sing pianissimo where most people would never do that. I like this kind of bravery. I like that he's in great control of what he's doing, even if like, okay, I prefer this type of sound when you go through the passaggio, or you know what I mean, like, I have my different opinions about things, but as an artist, I really like him. I like the
mhm.
risks that he takes. I mean, he has exciting high notes. I think he's a really rounded artist. I really like him. Um, yeah, for other tenors, I mean, there's a lot of good tenors now. Um, so many interesting ones.
Yeah. I don't mean to put you on the spot or
No, no,
anything.
no, no. You don't put me on the spot. I'm just really like, I don't have one specific. I mean, it's easy to talk
Mhm.
about Kaufman because he's kind of,
Sure, he's in the headlines. Yeah, yeah.
he's one of the big ones. But yeah, I think what I do nowadays is I just take something from each tenor. Like, oh, do you know Michael Fabiano?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, great voice, a really fun guy. We get along really well. We hung out a few times and talking tenor stuff.
Hmm.
But for example, we were talking, and it's so funny how we think about ourselves, because I said to him, dude, why don't you sing, for example, Ballo in Maschera, like tomorrow? And he was like, no. And he was also, he is also careful, like, no, I'll take it slow. But for me, in my ear, he's got this kind of zhuzh in his voice, like when you hear boom chicka chick 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 chick, like
Hmm.
for me, I see him, I'm like, he's in his element. When I hear boom chicka chick chick, I'm like, oh god, here we go, take it easy, go. But he was saying the opposite to me. He said I'm okay with that. He said, but when I hear these big giant long archy phrases, like for me, I'm like, that's lovely, I love it. And he's like, I hate those. So
Yeah.
we all have our you know plus and minuses, or strengths and weaknesses. I don't personally think that he was weak in that sense, but his sensation is he rather do boom chicka 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 instead of this
Hmm.
long phrase. I have the exact opposite. So yeah. So for example, he have a very exciting voice. I like his, but it's more about that. I try to think, so what is he doing besides just nature? What is his approach that helps him get into that zone in a more comfortable way? And that's literally what I'm doing all the time when I hear other singers, just like, and sometimes I can't even enjoy it all the way because, well, especially with tenors, because I'm like kind of analyzing, like,
It's a curse, yeah.
yeah,
If my parents love to put like classical stuff on at the dinner table or whatever,
right.
and I can't have a conversation with them because it's just on, like my ears like just always
halfway
like,
through biting,
either turn it down, or put a soprano on, or even still like put pop music on or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do better with other voice types. Then I'm like, okay, just enjoy it. But tenors, I'm like, That's true. Yeah.
Wonderful. So another question just about the color of your voice. It's some people might call it baritonal in quality compared to lyric tenor, leggero, of course, right? And you've maintained that color, maybe not as much or more so or whatever, throughout your career from the recordings that are at least available on YouTube. Even the recordings of you singing Così, you have this connection to the body that has been maintained throughout. But to juxtapose that ability you have, or that natural color you have the ability to seamlessly go into dolce singing. It's seemingly quite easily, and it becomes very dolce and very slender. And can you talk about maybe what you think of when you do that, and were you always attracted to this baritonal sound? Is obviously that's your natural sound, but when I hear you speak, this is common for many tenors. You hear them speak with one voice and they sing with another because the throat's open and the larynx is tilted and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So talk about a little bit of the color of your voice and how you approach dolce singing, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. I think I've always kind of had that naturally, and I think definitely at some points I kind of went into it too much, and I thought, okay, that's probably too much, because I had quite a bit naturally, so I indulged a bit, and then other times I thought, oh no, I need to stay, and I got away from it. Now I'm at the point where I just let it go natural, and in that case, it's actually grown more, let's say darker or more baritone. But I've always had it, even when I was singing only Mozart. So I always thought that it was just a lucky, in my opinion, lucky part. There's been many conductors who said, Charlie, you can sing, it doesn't have to be so baritone, but I'm not doing it on purpose. Like, that's what was the indication for me, even early, that my happy land is going to be somewhere in those kind of roles that require more of the middle kind of full tenor singing, and not way up there, and not Otello, that's like, with a really hardcore squealo and real, forceful kind of thing. It's somewhere in the middle, where it's dark, full, but still, let's say, lyric in its nature. So, and I'm okay with that. So once I've accepted that, I always kind of had this color, but what's happened now is with this more relaxed, like, as you know, with Arthur, it's more of a kind of not forcing the larynx down, but, being very relaxed. And what happens is just more color comes through, when you sing that way. And the funny thing is, I'm less tired at end of operas than I used to be when I was all the time, this, because it's more tiring to do it that way. So that's something that I've just accepted, and actually I like it, because for me it's just it feels good. I like the sound.
You feel like more masculine, or something.
Masculine,
if that's what
exactly. But what has happened, I think, is that I never weighted it down enough that it really disconnected me from this kind of wah mixy kind of, like you said, this pianissimo kind of singing. And I really think that's all about head voice. So I use my head voice. I work my head voice in my in my exercises and everything. And I was using it anyway from playing the guitar and doing the Beatles songs. You have to use this kind of thing. So what I do, even to this day, one of my earlier things that I learned for exercises is I kind of bring my head voice down, like just, kind of, and I bring it down much lower than I would ever use it, already in the middle range, just so I can kind of mix that heady quality with even the middle of the range.
And do you use ooh for that specifically?
Yeah, ooh is a really good one to get these heady tones, very easily.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I do that a lot, and it's something I always try to incorporate, not only into my exercises, but when I sing. I always try to find an opportunity where I can use that. So if I sing a role that never has that, then it doesn't feel like a very satisfying role. I want to be able to do a bit of both, or I find a musical moment where I'm able to do it. But that's more of a conscious thing. And perhaps I had some naturally from just doing all my Beatles songs, but it's a decision I make all the time to really keep that going. And I feel when I haven't been doing it, I feel it, because that kind of middle to passaggio range can get a little bit more rigid if I'm not using this kind of head voice. If I'm not incorporating the head voice into that range, I start to feel it after a while. So I make a conscious effort to keep that going all the time, and it's actually just relaxing in general. It feels good.
Sure. Now, now more specifically, like if you were to diminuendo an F natural, let's say, from forte to piano, what sort of sensation are you going for when you allow that to happen?
Yeah, well, with singing, it's all about weird, imagery and everything. That
of course,
everyone has.
We can't see the keys that we play.
Exactly right. Yeah. But for me, the way I've been doing it is that first off, it's incorporating the head voice into the chest. So there's definitely a mix there going on. And second off, what I was working on with Arthur too, it's more, which I kind of had a natural sensation to do anyway. It's more that the farther I kind of send it up, and I don't mean in the actual physical shape of the face or anything like that, but the farther I put that, the sound kind of going away from me. It's really so strange singing. But
that's okay. No, articulate that. Right? Yeah.
So if I'm doing a diminuendo, I think of it as going up and away, and not forward. For example, I don't try to place it. I guess I leave the space and I let it go. When I'm most successful at this thing, I feel like I'm absolutely free, and it's definitely going that way, going out and behind me, this way. Not so much as placement, but in the direction of where let's say the air is going. Let's say
sure.
That would be the only kind of imagery I would use for that sensation. That it's kind of repeating itself in this backwards and upwards direction, as far as the air goes. But I don't necessarily think about that when I'm singing it, but it's more of a practice thing. And sure. Every acoustic is different in every theater, every space you're singing in. So sometimes there's a readjustment on the stage itself when you're doing it. For example, I remember last time I was singing Bohème, it was in Budapest at the opera there, and there's this famous phrase in Act 3 where he sings and now I just forgot the words right now, in the quartet, and da 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 dee, da da dee, da da da. Anyway, he goes, oh gosh, I forgot the word.
Pensier?
Yeah, no, it's not pensier. It's there's a different word, but you know what I'm saying. And he goes up to A flat.
And you diminuendo to that.
Yeah, and that, and like, yeah. Da dee da dee da. That one, that phrase right there.
Yeah.
It should be piano, but then it continues. But for me, it's more, in this case, for example, it's more about making the space, that I'm already there. Alla stagione. There it is. It's already in the space, because as soon as I go then it's too much of an adjustment. But if I'm already there, I kind of already sending it up. That's just technically what I would do on stage.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, I try to think of the color before, and I learned that from something that Gedda said. I don't remember if I read it or if maybe, because when I was working in the Met program, the times that we worked with Levine, he asked me also, he said, so who are your tenors that you like? And at that time I was having an obsession with Gedda, and he said, that's a really good one. He also loved Gedda. So anyway, but Gedda was saying that, I don't remember if Levine told me or if I read it, but Gedda said that when he approaches, let's say, a pianissimo note or something, he thinks of the color more than the technical way he's going to do it. So if
Mhm.
you imagine the color already of what you're trying to accomplish, you're almost by nature going in that direction anyway. So I find that actually serves pretty well. So I imagine what the color I want to create there. And if you're in decent form, usually it goes there. So, and I don't mean to do it just from like, okay, go for it and see what happens. Obviously, there's your practice, the technical aspects of what you need to do. But at that moment, it's more about imagining the color. So even if it's not as pianissimo as maybe you want it in decibels, the color is correct. So the sensation for the audience is that, wow, this pianissimo kind of glimmering note. So and I think that's more the key than actually that the volume is very small, because obviously the volume is not the issue. It needs to ring out and echo and into the hall. So it's
Absolutely.
more about the color, I guess, So
Yeah.
that's what I try.
I'm a huge Arthur really stressed that point to me actually. He was like,
Mhm.
don't try to sing soft
Yeah,
just because it says piano. It's about changing
exactly.
the color, and that was his big thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Another question I have specifically for when you first started studying with Arthur, because I had this experience. I came from a very like clear squillo in the mask type of a thing, artificially like lightening
Yeah.
but it got me my high notes to begin with, but then I
Sure.
had this very weird tenorial young sound going into grad school, and then when I
Uh-huh.
got to him, all of a sudden I like became a baritone with high notes. Is sort of what I felt like. um but the one thing that allowed me to sing that way successfully for the first time with this relaxed open sort of a
Mhm.
throat was to start forgetting about the vowels and the
Yeah,
clarity of the vowels. And I don't
yeah,
know if you had a similar experience, like you weren't singing clear vowels anymore, because that's what I felt at first. But
yeah,
the result is that when looking back at that is that it was actually more clear, even though in my ear
yeah.
that
It
it
feels a bit more
seems
mushy, mushy.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
don't know if it was a similar thing for you.
Well, I don't know if it was exactly similar, but I was placing the vowels a bit more before, like, the lips should be like this when I sing oh, and I was maybe messing around too much, and Arthur was always saying to me, just relax the mouth, relax the lips. You don't need to, do this or do that. Obviously there's different shapes, obviously, but they were a little bit closer together, those shapes, after we started working more. And
Mhm.
but the color of the vowels were coming through very clearly, I think. So the result is the same, but
Mhm. Well, it's not the same between no, your
no,
result
no,
is a bit better than my result.
everyone's has their thing, but
Yeah.
I think it was more about that. For me, it was more about how I was positioning my mouth for each thing like that. So
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I just felt like when I have to articulate it for my few students that I have out here, I think, don't pronounce the vowel with the throat. The throat
uh,
needs to be,
in that
because
kind of
that's what I
same,
felt like I was doing when I was doing it wrong. I would say ah, e, o, u instead of like ah, he, ho,
exactly,
you
yeah.
know.
And it's
So
funny because it feels weird to you, but to the audience, the sound is much better.
yeah, I forget who I heard this from. No, I remember who I heard this from. His name was Dale Fundling, and he was Pyotr Bachawa's teacher for
Oh
like
yeah.
15 years.
Uh-huh.
And he worked closely with Dr. Price actually when we would
Oh.
go abroad, and I think he actually helped Dr. Price after his ear injury to sort
Oh
of,
right.
he was in the middle of a performance and to try and refigure out his voice. But he made the point to me once that sound brightens as it travels acoustically. Now, I don't want to like mess any thoughts up with you. I'm just sharing it with you. But and so that thought gave me permission to sing a little darker, because of course when you hear Pavarotti, you hear this like
Oh yeah.
sunshine, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Then after hearing that, and my ears have been tuned for many more years and going through making a lot more mistakes and
Right.
recovering from those mistakes and
Mhm.
honing your craft, you hear actually a darkness in Pavarotti's voice compared to when he speaks. Of course, the result is what it is what we
Yeah.
hear as an audience, but you hear in the process of what he's doing that he
Oh
even
yeah.
speaks about, when he speaks about covering, and you would know more than anyone else, but like there's a YouTube video that's very famous that where he talks about covering the F sharp and that it's
Yeah.
a noble sound. And
Yeah, no, I mean
um,
that guy was a cover master. I mean, he
yeah.
covers even F a lot of times,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so it's funny because for such a voice that people, associate with brightness, I mean, he covered very early, as opposed to, for example, De Stefano, who almost never covered. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So, which by nature is actually a more bright sound to keep this wide open in the passaggio. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I think he had a really squealy kind of voice by nature. But yeah, I agree with you too. When you watch him, he's completely relaxed here on the throat, and all those vowels are flipped over, into a covered position. So yeah, it's very interesting. So that's where I think it comes to the nature of the voice itself.
Yeah,
So,
I think just quickly, a more extreme anecdotal piece of evidence I heard is someone who had heard Giuseppe Giacomini in the theater, because on recordings we don't associate him with a bright sound whatsoever.
Not at all, yeah.
But it was someone, Unai Kuza. He's actually at the Berlin Komische on a fest, I think. And when I interviewed him in December, he was telling me his teacher, who had heard Giacomini and many other people anecdotally who had heard him live in the theater, and said that he's definitely a tenor. There's no question that he's a pushed up baritone or anything. No. But on recording, you get a totally different sense.
I remember the first time listening to him on recording, I was like, oh my God, what is that?
That's a tenor.
That's amazing, It was, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a wild thing how sound works. And I connected with Michael Fabiano a little bit a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to work a similar thing out for this, but of course his schedule's crazy. Yeah. But I made a similar comment to him. I was like, when I first heard your voice on recording and from that Met documentary from 10 years ago and stuff, it's very exciting. And I was like, it was interesting because before I heard you live the first time, he sang at a competition gala, I think the Puccini, something like that foundation, when I was in New York. And when he sang live, it was totally different than what I'd heard on a recording. Not like Giacomini, totally different, of course, but the sheer lyricism mixed with the power is something that you don't get over recording. And it was very similar with you as well. The first time I heard you at Pepperdine, was like the power mixed with the lyricism that's in there. It's like, it's so much more sound than people are used to hearing from at least a student level, unless those students have figured out how to healthily open their throat, really.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Well, and that's the thing about recordings too. I mean, it's never the same as live performance. And there are voices who record so well, and some who are amazing in the theater, but for some reason, you don't quite get it in the recordings. It's a strange thing. Yeah.
A complaint I hear now, I don't know if you know him, but Dmitry Forostovsky, I hope he's like doing really well medically and stuff. It's a shame to see him.
Oh yeah, I just sang with him a couple months ago. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah. So he is like such an amazing artist, I think, and the color of his voice is like incredible. But the one thing you hear every now and then from people who hear him is that the voice isn't as present in the theater as you would think, based on the quality of it in recordings. I don't know if.
Well, it's funny because I heard that also too. But I remember the first time I really heard him live, he was singing Germont at the Met, and I had a higher up seat. And I heard him. I thought, I'm sorry, what's the complaint? I heard every note very well. So, I mean, Germont is a bit more, I mean, it's not super heavy, it's a bit more lyric. And I also heard him sing Don Carlo. Was amazing also. So perhaps it's just, it depends on, I mean, he's the coolest guy. He's so funny. This is interesting about meeting so many different artists. Like, he has this presence, and you think, whoa, like, wow, he knows how to do it, like when he walks in a room, like wow. But
the silver fox.
Yeah. But personally, when you work with him and you become, colleagues and friends with him, he is so funny. He's like a little kitty cat. He's like all the time hugging and like, oh, no. He's so sweet and affectionate, and he's just absolutely the nicest, coolest guy. Funny as hell. But I've seen him. I've been with him where he's joking and like acting crazy, and then we'll walk into a certain thing because I've done some concerts with him, and then walk into a place where there's press and blah blah blah, and then it's like, and then you're like, whoa, the tiger has arrived, the Siberian tiger. It's like, boom. So he just knows exactly how to do. He's amazing.
Yeah, cool, he works it. It's very cool. Yeah. Charlie, thank you so much for all the time you've given to this. This has really been my pleasure, hearing all the stories you have and the story of your career and how it progressed and the memories you were willing to share. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Let's do it again sometime. We can talk about some other specific things. It's a pleasure. No problem. It's fun.
I would love to, and I need to try and get people to fly you out to the Middle East to perform out here. So
Oh, it would be amazing. I keep hearing really cool things about the houses there, so it would be a pleasure to come. Yeah,
yeah, we just had Domingo a bit ago in Dubai, and we're working on getting bigger people out to Qatar,
that
but
would be
it's tough.
fantastic. Hey, let me know. I'll be happy to come. It'll be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, great.
All
Thank
right,
you
my
so
friend.
much,
Thank you.
Charlie.
I
Take
got good
care.
luck with everything. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care,
All
bro.
right. Bye.